in the last lecture we saw that we could do iteration with filtering, which means that we could not do an operation for all the cards, but you could check if the card satisfies some condition, like for example whether it is a boy or a girl, or whether the the date of birth is within a certain range, and then select those cards which satisfy those conditions, which is called the filter, and then do only a count operation or an accumulate operation for only those selected cards. Okay. So, in this lecture I want to basically look at how to convert a flow chart, how to convert such a procedure in which there is filtering going on into a flow chart. So, we are going to consider specifically doing a flow chart for sum in which some filtering is being done. So, for example, suppose we want to modify the flow chart for doing sum, which is shown here, to do only the sum of boys maths marks. We do not want to add up all the maths marks of all the students, we want to only add up all the student maths marks of the boys in the class. So, if you want to do that, then this flow chart basically is adding all the cards. Somewhere in here we have to check whether the card is that of a boy, and only then do the sum, and if it is not that of a boy we should not do the sum. So, the question really is, where do we do this check of whether it is a boy or not. So, clearly it is not at the initialization, somewhere inside the iterator we have to do it. So, in the initialization step where we are setting sum to 0, there is nothing to be done. We are going to check whether there are more cards in pile 1, that we are going to do, whether it is boys or girls, we are going to do that, and inside this we have to pick a card from the pile 1, we have to do that anyway. We have to move the card to pile 2, that also we have to do anyway, but it is only here that where we are adding the math score to sum that we need to make some change, right. So, we have to not do it for all the cards. So, after between here and here, if that card X belongs to a girl, then we should not do the addition, but if it belongs to a boy, then we have to do the addition. So, something in here we have to basically insert something in here, so that we can check whether it is a boy or a girl. And how do we do that? We have seen earlier that the way to do a check and then proceed in the flow chart is by using a condition box, and the condition box is denoted by diamond. So, we have to insert inside this we have to insert a diamond. Okay. So, I am moving these boxes so that I can create some space, and I have inserted basically a diamond box. And what are we checking inside the diamond box? We are checking whether the card X has boy written on it, which is M. In our case basically the card will have M, the gender M written on it. So, we are checking whether X is a boy or not. Okay. So, if X is a boy, then we continue through the process, which basically means that we add the maths marks to sum, but on the other hand if X is not a boy, then there is nothing to do really, right, there is nothing to do. So, when we check X is a boy, it could turn out that the card X actually is a girl, in which case there is nothing to be done. So, how do we represent that nothing is to be done? So, basically if there is nothing to be done, then we are not adding the maths score to sum. So, in some sense we have to skip this next step, and so the easiest way to represent that nothing needs to be done is to bypass this box and go to the point after this. So, the way to do that basically is to write on the no condition, that is when the condition turns out to be false, that is X is not a boy, which means X is a girl, you just have an arrow which goes all the way back like this to this decision box. So, basically you are just skipping this, adding maths to sum and going back to the beginning of the iteration, which if you remember, beginning of the iteration is checking whether there are any more cards in pile 1. So, essentially the condition check here, the condition that we are checking here for filtering is whether X is a boy. There are two possibilities. One is X is indeed a boy, which means the condition comes out true, in which case you will add the maths marks to sum, or it could come out false, in which case you do nothing, and the way to represent nothing is you bypass this box, that is go around this box and go back to the start of the iteration.